Very good, thank you. How are you?
I am good. So, are you excited? You are the first speaker for this Global Virtual Summit 2026 for Day 3 event.
Mhm.
So, before you start your presentation, I would like to introduce you to the audience. So, welcome on stage, Jill Maidment. So, yeah, let me give her introduction today. So, Jill Maidman is an award winning executive business coach, leadership development specialist, and founder of Natural Talent. With over 20 years of experience, she helps executives, organizations, and teams strengthen leadership capability, navigate change, and achieve sustainable business success through executive coaching, talent assessment, and leadership development. Jill is internationally recognized for her practical, results driven approach to building resilient leaders and high performing teams. So, that is the great introduction of Jill. So, Jill, the stage is all yours. So, good luck.
Thank you so much. And just checking, can you see the slides all right?
No, not yet.
Oh, okay. So I've shared the slides, but so you can't see them. Okay, bear with me then. I wonder, I have shared them, so just let's double check what's the reason behind them not being there. So yeah, I've got, let's have a look. Okay. Right, let's have a look. Okay, hopefully you're going to be able to see the slides in a minute. Can you see the slides? Yes?
No, no.
No? Okay, bear with me again. Not even now?
Yeah,
Yeah.
no.
Can you see them?
You can change the window and I can see, but you can change the window and share.
Yes, can you actually see the slides yet?
It's not clear.
You can't see them?
Yeah.
Okay, let me just double check here because
Can you
yeah,
please reshare?
yeah, they're on screen here. Just bear with me. Okay, let's have a look. I've shared the screen, but for some reason, if you can't see them, I can see them. So let's have a look. Yeah, it's got that I'm presenting the slides. Can you see them now or not? Can you see them? Hi, Melinda. Can you see the slides? Okay, I think we've got a technical hitch, unfortunately. Let me just double check. Hi, Melinda. Can you see the slides now? Hi, Melinda. Can you see the slides? Anybody that's joining, I believe we've got a technical hitch for some reason, so I think Melinda's organising it. Are you able to see the slides? I've shared the screen. Do you want me to share them again, or are you going to share them for me? Would you like me to share them again, or are you going to share them for me? Okay. Well, I'm going to try and share them, everybody, if you're listening and watching, so apologies for this. Okay, let's do this. Can you see them?
No, can you please?
I talk about it a lot. I also talk about building resilient leaders and high-performing teams. So I'm not going to talk through who I am, but the reason why I'm here is I'm really, really passionate about transforming individuals teams and organizations, and really getting to high performance levels. So under the banner of leadership and re-envisaging leadership, especially for women in the workplace, then this is aligning with what I'm going to talk about today. So, of course, we're all talking about AI at the moment. I absolutely love AI. I use it all day, every day. It's really, really important. I think we have to embrace AI. We have to embrace change, but we also have to embrace AI. We have to embrace change, but we also have to acknowledge really that the world has changed forever. So, of course, we're seeing people unfortunately being laid off due to the rapid advance of AI. We've also got this, what I call the perfect storm at the moment, with geopolitical instability. We've got economic uncertainty. There is skill shortage, especially in a lot of technical areas. Obviously, post-pandemic, we've got more and more people working from home or in hybrid working environments. We've got global teams, cross-functional teams, matrix management scenarios. So it's really, really complex. And of course, what we're seeing at the moment, change is always happening, but this is really much, much faster and constant organizational change. We're never going to go back to normal. After the pandemic, we kept talking about the new normal. This is really now the new normal, because we're leading leaders through permanent disruption. But I'm always very optimistic as an executive coach and mentor, business coach, resilience coach, career coach, even dealing with people who have been laid off. And I'm always saying there are opportunities, and there's opportunities for courageous, values-driven leadership and really sort of positive attitude towards changes and kind of embracing them. Now, of course, men are great leaders as well, but maybe why we're looking at women leaders matter being more important maybe than ever at the moment is because today's environment is so complex. Yes, of course, we can all build trust, whether we're male, female, anybody can build trust. But with women, of course, in particular, we're known for building empathy, as well as making courageous decisions. And the key is really now to inspire innovation, inspire change, and also, of course, to create inclusive cultures. There's a lot of statistics around at the moment regarding how inclusive boards, how boards and organizations with women at the top are very successful and impactful. And of course, all this now is about balancing just not people issues, but performance as well. So as I've said, you need that kind of human approach. Despite the absolute rapid rise of AI, we can't help but acknowledge and talk about AI at the moment. And if we look just back, reflect a little bit, we always used to talk about managing change. I used to run a lot of change programs. We used to talk about the reason behind change. We used to look at how we can build resilience, both as individuals and groups and teams globally or within each country. Now, all we hear about is actually leading transformation. And of course, the old traditional leadership was very much around control, certainty, hierarchy. That has obviously completely changed now. So I keep hearing about the new leadership qualities, the new leadership skills that are required in this really complex, uncertain world. Curiosity keeps appearing. I even belong to a group, a networking group. I'll be really pleased for me to give a shout out to it, called the Curious Community. And you've got to keep asking why. Why are we doing this? Of course, as a leader, you've got to explain why you're changing things before you actually start getting into the detail and the how of change. And that's what I keep saying to many leaders. I've been on calls this morning with some leaders in all sorts of different types of organizations, and we reiterate that the whole time. Explain the reasons behind the need for change before you actually start getting into the real detail of the process, the procedures, structures that are going to sort of take place. So being adaptable, being agile is more important now than ever as a leader. And even if you're not leading or managing teams, you may well be business owner, so you're still a leader, you're leading your small organization, but also self-managing, self-leading. I always say these qualities and skills are really important there. And of course, trying to experiment, and as Americans always say, fail fast but fail cheap, basically. So don't make too many mistakes, use them as learning opportunities, experiment. There are so many exciting things happening now, especially around AI. You've got to influence, you've really got to influence key stakeholders. Stakeholder management now is so much more complex than it used to be. You've got internal stakeholders, externals, you've got partners, you've got venture capitalists, right across the board, across different functions. You've got a lot more stakeholders, very, very different stakeholders. So the key is to really be able to influence them. And also coaching and mentoring. Yes, of course, I'm a coach and mentor. I'm a big advocate for that, both as an external coach, but similarly as a leader, that coaching approach now is really important, to bring your teams with you, to ask them questions, to be able to mentor them as well. Now, I talk about resilience a lot. I have a slide on resilience. We're going to cover that very briefly today. Really, really important skill for leaders now. You've got to have what I call that backbone of steel to be able to cope with all the changes and future changes, ongoing change, okay? And also communicate more. Really, communication has always been so important for any organization, any leader, but it's now more important than ever to actually communicate, as I say, the reason behind change, the reason behind certain actions before you get into the details, I say. And of course, empathizing, compassionate leadership or authentic leadership, really, really important. We've got a mental health crisis. We've got people who are losing their jobs. I see it every day, sadly. To actually show empathy, it's really, really important. Okay, so moving on. Can't help but talk about AI. So I really hope by the end of my talk, and I'm sure by the end of the conference over the next few days, that you will really be embracing AI, because you can't ignore it. But of course, there are some skills that cannot be replaced by robots yet, I would say. And of course, there's a lot of discussion at the moment. Can coaches be replaced by AI? Can leaders be replaced by AI? Not at the moment, we feel, because of course we've got those leadership skills, same skills as well for coaches as well, where you need that emotional intelligence. Some robots are picking up on this, and if you use any online tools, you may be seeing this. You get positive feedback from some of your prompts, for example, but that real emotional intelligence, reading the room, body language, motivation, whatever is motivating people and whatever emotions they're actually feeling, and then adapting your style accordingly. Of course, critical thinking as well, almost strategic thinking, seeing that helicopter view, for example, really important when I'm coaching and mentoring. It's looking at that helicopter view of the organization, what's happening. Being courageous, being brave, actually taking that leap. I keep saying, especially to my female clients, you've got to back yourself, really back yourself, get over any imposter syndrome, any negative thoughts, and really back yourself and be courageous, make some interesting decisions, make some bold decisions, take some risks. And of course, that ties in with ethical judgment, making those ethical decisions as well. I've touched on communication skills being so important, but also being creative. We've got to be creative now. We've got to be courageous. We've got to be curious. All those skills, qualities that are needed more so than ever. Coaching, I've touched on, trust building. So of course, AI may well transform work, but it's still going to be people who do transform organizations. So one of the, and interestingly, this is a prompt that came up on AI, believe it or not, when I was discussing with one of the bots around presenting today, talking today at the conference. And it came up with a very interesting comment about leaders now needing to be better learners rather than greater experts. We all talk about experts, we talk about thought leadership, but what about actually leaders now really having to learn? We've all got to learn new skills, especially the computing skills, technological skills, more than ever. Okay, so little quick exercise for everybody in the room. I said I was going to talk about resilience because I'm a real advocate of it. I've written an ebook on resilience during and just after the pandemic. So if you'd like a free copy of that, just let me know. It's full of lots of different exercises that could really help if you are feeling stressed, if you need to bounce back from setbacks, or again, I always say bounce forward with renewed rigor. So little exercise today, very simple, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being 10 out of 10 being absolutely excellent. You feel I'm completely resilient. Nothing can put me off, the technology doesn't work, or there's been a real, I always say there's always a curveball. That was on a meeting this morning. You know, you've got a really big challenge to deal with. You might have prepared well. We always talk about that. So think about the reason behind your score. What's behind that score? Why are you not feeling as resilient as maybe you could do? And also, how can you get to 10 out of 10? And then set some SMART goals. If you're not familiar with SMART, then it's specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time bound. So really think about those things that you can actually do to get yourself to 10 out of 10. Okay, and surprise, surprise, next slide, that is a photo of a woman at the top of a mountain. Really, it's very difficult to find that, but again, resilient leaders are men as well. So how do you actually build that personal resilience? I'm not talking about organizational resilience through transformation and change. I'm talking about personal resilience. And the importance is really to try and the important elements of trying to remain optimistic, because so many people are getting very, very negative, not just about the news. If you think back to how I started the talk today regarding the world changing, so much instability, so much uncertainty. The key is to try and keep optimistic. And on one of my global talks a few months ago, I had a really interesting question from somebody, and it was, can your resilience levels just run out? In other words, you got to 0, 1 or 0 out of 10 in terms of how resilient you feel on a particular day. Brilliant question. Of course, resilience skills, they are very complex. If you look at, they're managing your time, your pressures, your emotions, managing stress. And of course, if you've had a lot of setbacks, for example, maybe some perceived failures, you haven't done particularly well for whatever reason, you may have illness, all sorts of key life events in your family, you can actually feel, goodness me, where is my resilience? But as human beings, we tend to, okay, not sure about what is going to happen with the robots in the future regarding resilience. That might be a whole nother piece of research. So please, if you're doing anything like that, that would be really, really interesting to hear. But as human beings, we do tend to have that really good ability to bounce back from setbacks and perceived failures. Key as well, in particular, of course, we all have very busy lives, but creating those healthy boundaries so that you don't say yes to everything, that you can actually say no politely and assertive. I know, again, as if you're parents, co-parenting or whatever, sometimes you feel like, yes, you've got to say yes to whatever your children are demanding or the school is demanding. And so the next thing you feel you're doing is you're running ragged. You've got no time for yourself, no time for what I call self-care. It's not being selfish. It's creating those healthy boundaries, both in and outside work. And of course, really importantly, regulating your emotions, which is very, very difficult to do, especially in the heat of the moment. Just been discussing that with an executive coaching client, where it's like, right, don't react to bad communication, an awkward individual, issues with a key stakeholder. What you have to do is respond. So stop, think, breathe, and then maybe ask them an open-ended question. Okay, what's the reason behind that? How are you feeling? Why are you feeling like that? How can I help? And I touched on it very briefly earlier regarding imposter syndrome, that negative head chatter that is sometimes called the inner critic, the inner judge. And again, if you look back to Stone Age, there was the fight, flight, freeze response, where you might have a woolly mammoth or a large animal moving towards you, and you had to either fight it. Unfortunately, if you froze, you'd probably get eaten or certainly sort of battered, or you fight, freeze, so you fight the woolly mammoth and you survive. Our brains haven't really evolved that much, and I'm not going to go into all the kind of the reasons behind that physiologically, but of course what we do need to do is actually try and keep calm under pressure, and then deal with those nagging negative thoughts. I can't do this. Did I make a good impression? It's like backing yourself, as I always say, and especially as women who may feel they're lacking confidence, they're going into an important meeting, they may feel, look, I'm prepared, but there's a lot of individuals in the room, a lot of senior people. It's really have those positive affirmations, positive statements that you can say, I can do this, I'm going to do it, I'm going to do well. and learn from any setbacks. That's really, really key. So perceived failures, but if you think, okay, that didn't work quite as well as I wanted to, what can I do differently? Learn from those. That's the absolute key. Not keep making the same mistakes or following a sort of negative pattern. Also, I talk a lot about focus generally, but also really trying to influence and focus on what you can control. So that's your breathing, that's your attitude, your behaviors, and forgetting about all the noise. I think now more than ever, there's so much noise in the world. There's so many ways to get the news, whether it's on the TV, on a tablet, on your phone, and we're inundated with noise and suggestions and recommendations for every aspect of working life and our personal lives. But it's almost like, okay, keep control of what you can focus on and influence. So you can't influence other people's opinions online. Usually you don't want to get into that kind of downward spiral of trying to do so. But things like traffic, weather, things that you really cannot control, then try and focus again on what you are able to do positively. And I'm a big fan of horizon scanning. People are always describing me as being strategic, but you have to. And again, going back to the whole message around AI, there's no point in ignoring it, burying our heads in the sand in the freeze response, stress response. You have to look at, okay, what's going to happen strategically? What do I need to do strategically, both personally in private life, but also very importantly within work. And of course, I've said earlier about learners. We've got to start really learning and embracing new ideas and continue to do so. Very importantly, individually, but of course as a leader as well. Okay, I'm going to touch very, very briefly on building high-performing teams in order to be able to cope with change. And really, the kind of essence behind this hasn't really changed. If you look at, if you're into your football, your soccer in the US, we've just had the FIFA Men's Football Championships, Spain won. And if you look at that team within sport, and you can align that with what happens in successful organizations and teams within organizations, the same qualities and the same elements are still true, despite all the uncertainty and complexity of what's happening in and outside work. So it's having that shared vision. Where do we want to go? What is our stretch goal? As the Americans always say, I've worked a lot with American companies, and I love the fact that they are so ambitious. They aim very, very high. They think, okay, looking back to the previous slide, you've got a mountain, we're going to climb to that peak. Actually, no, let's go to the one after that and visualize it. So that's the way to be successful. And obviously that's very much part of coaching and mentoring. Trust, we've talked about being able to trust each other, not working in silos, especially really complex now with cross-functional teams as well. And having that psychological safety where people feel able to actually be honest, be open, share failures, or what I call perceived failures and setbacks. So knowing that you're not going to be told off, you're not going to be made to feel stupid within a team. Acknowledge, okay, there's been a setback or I've made a mistake, but I'm going to learn from it. And of course, being accountable, not just to your whether it's a football coach, whether it's your leader, whether it's a chief exec, whoever, but being accountable to the team and yourself as well. Collaboration, I love the word collaboration. I always say you've got to collaborate. People always say to me, why are you dealing with so many of your competitors? And I'm like, they're not competitors, they're collaborators. We often partner together. So a competitor and I may work on a large project together so that we've got all the strengths. Collaboration is absolutely key and will be so going forward as well. And actually recognition, so important in terms of delivering that positive feedback. Okay, so in the past used to see quite a few leaders who would call out, both in sports teams, but in business as well. They'd call out kind of poor behavior, bad mistakes, but no, giving positive feedback where due and celebrating success is really important. And you'll see there's a constant theme running through my talk today about continually learning, continually innovating, which is what we absolutely have to do. Okay, we will have a time for questions and hopefully some answers at the end of my talk. So jot them down. And if you want to talk more about resilience and high-performing teams, please do. But I've already talked about how important communication is. It's always been the key. When I started out in business, everybody kept saying communicate, communicate. Communication is so important. However, now in such a complex and uncertain world, especially in the workplace, it's more important for leaders to communicate even more often. I've run lots of transformation programs where I've co-presented with one of the leaders from the organization I'm working with, and we're on stage, quite a large group, an all hands or a town hall meeting, and we've started saying, okay, as you know, this is why we're introducing some change, so explaining the why before the how and the processes. And some people will actually put their hands up and say, I haven't seen an email, I haven't seen anything about this. We always smile because you can tell people so many times what you're doing, if there's a restructure or whatever, but usually people don't want to see, almost like that freeze response, or they're too busy and they think, I'm not reading that email, that doesn't seem to affect me. So communicate more often in every single way. We've got so many means of communication nowadays, really, really important, but really crucial as well for leaders, especially going through major change, to be more honest as you possibly can regarding financials, for example, regarding the future. You know, we're still talking about AI, but being honest about what could potentially happen. And of course, being more visible. Very difficult, of course, during the pandemic, unbelievably, over 6 years ago now, where it was very difficult for leaders to be visible and almost walk the floor. But now we've got the opportunity online more than ever to actually be visible, to talk on virtual town halls and all hands meetings. And of course, we've got messaging, etc. So really important. And also to be so consistent. We don't want inconsistency. We don't want too many U-turns and changes. We want that message to be consistent. And interestingly, again, I will be completely transparent here. It was very interesting what AI was saying about communicating during change. So most of this intellectual property, most of the tips, tools and techniques and models are always mine. And a lot of them are from a lot of leaders and management and leadership gurus from many years ago. But AI basically came up with people rarely fear change. They actually fear uncertainty, which I think you would probably agree with. Yes, I'm afraid I'm going to have 2 more slides regarding AI. So it's not going to replace leaders as such, but it's definitely raising the bar, because yes, AI can replace repetitive work, analysis, admin tasks, of course. But as I've already alluded to before, with the skills that we need, and I won't go through those again, but you can see you've got that leadership judgment, ethical judgment, creativity, creating a positive culture as well, having that coaching approach, having a really good purpose, vision as well. And also, as I've said, horizon scanning to give that strategic vision. So I promise, last slide regarding AI. In the context of the conference over the next few days, and indeed today, how in particular do we feel women can actually lead in this volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous, if you're familiar with the VUCA, V-U-C-A, future, then of course women should back themselves, have that confidence to be able to lead through, that responsible AI adoption, that ethical AI adoption. And we've had lots of conversations with my clients regarding how are you using, for example, I'm not going to mention them because there's lots of different platforms available, but how can you use that, and how you can obviously double check that everything is 100% accurate, which is really important. But also, involving different people to actually innovate, getting those meetings together. We can think strategically, can come up with great ideas, and also run sustainable businesses. There's a lot of talk at the moment around maybe dropping net zero targets, but actually looking at women who care about the environment. Of course, as I keep saying, men do as well, and men are great leaders. Ethical leadership, yes, definitely, we've touched on that. And also managing future talent. I've worked with some really high-powered female chief executives, male as well. But when you look at how they actually identify talent within their organizations and then bring them on with coaching and training, mentoring, it's really, really impactful to say, okay, let's give this individual an opportunity to progress and then see how they can perform and really contribute in a very positive way. So it's not can women lead effectively, it's how can women help to shape the future in this really, really complex environment. So maybe if you agree, and please feel free to contact me afterwards, I'll get my contact details to you at the very end. But the actions you can take today, keep being curious, and keep talking about leading with curiosity. Definitely communicate absolutely double as much as you normally do. Build that psychological safety, so within a team, so that people do feel really comfortable to be able to contribute and possibly make mistakes. And as I keep saying, embrace AI as a partner. I love it all day, every day, using it to basically manage my time in terms of giving it repetitive tasks, as we've said, analysis, embellishing, helping things to move through, really, really useful. And again, a lot of women can be a bit perfect. There's lots of stats around about women saying, oh, I'm not going to apply for that role because I only tick about 7 out of the 10 requirements on the job description. Whereas men quite often go for the job anyway if they've only got 5. So basically not being perfect. Of course, we aim for being extraordinary, but actually celebrating progress to get there. And some final reflections here. Definitely being agile, adaptable to change. That's the new competitive advantage now. You've got to pivot, of course, using that overused word. And really, it's not about that hierarchy and protecting your power. It's embracing everybody else, looking at potential, looking at possibilities. And as I say, there's a lot going on. There's a lot of negativity around, but actually identifying this as an opportunity for success and to evolve and develop. And of course, as I've mentioned, regarding teams, not a lot has changed regarding teams. You've got to break down silos. You've got to try and communicate and get cross-functional teams working together. I work with teams that are based all over the world, and obviously having regular meetings, regular online meetings where you actually have the cameras on as well. Now, technology, I love technology, especially when it works. It will transform work, of course, but it's still going to be, human beings who will be helping to transform people. Yes, you can have online coaches. Yes, you can have AI helping you with your workload, but ultimately we're still going to need humans. You'll be happy to hear. So, of course, we're talking about redefining leadership as women. We've got an opportunity to leave a legacy for the next generation, in conjunction with our very successful male leaders as well. So thanks very much for listening. Time for your questions now, please. And while there's questions as well, I'll just share my details. You can contact me via my website, which is www.natural-talent.com. I'm also on LinkedIn, so please fill in the contact form on the website. That comes directly to my inbox. I'll go through them as quickly as I can. Usually get back to people within about 4 hours if I'm not online coaching, and definitely drop me a message on LinkedIn as well. Okay, thanks so much for listening. I'd love to hear any questions if you have them. I'm not sure if you can still hear me. I hope you can. Okay. Hi, do we have any questions? I don't know if you can still hear me and see me.
Yes, of course. There are a lot of questions from our audience, and thank you so much, Jill, for sharing your wonderful presentation. It was really a good start with the first presentation by Jill. So, yes, here is the question from our audience. So, what inspired you to choose this topic, and what is one leadership skill everyone should develop today?
Oh, brilliant question. Thank you so much. Love it. So, yeah, the topic, I always talk about leading through change. I also always talk about building resilient teams and high-performing teams because it's what I've seen throughout my career. So I'm hoping, can you hear me still? I think you can. Just come onto the platform there. Yeah, so I've seen enormous amounts of change throughout my career. Before I started working for myself as a coach and a mentor 23 years ago, I used to work for large organizations, and I saw massive amounts of change then, and I saw how leaders could lead effectively through those changes. And of course, I saw some negatives as well. So that's why it's one of my absolute key themes. Resilience, again, so important. I've seen, unfortunately, people really, really struggle. I worked for a counselling organisation, not as a counsellor, but I dealt with some fairly major, should we say, traumatic events, large scale traumatic events in the aftermath of that. So that's why I've studied resilience as well. And teams, I'm very into sport. I love watching sport, especially football, soccer, rugby union, many, many different teams. And I'm really passionate about how teams can be high performing both within sport, but also they're the same or very, very similar elements within business as well. So one leadership skill, there's so many. I would say, to align with today's talk this morning, I would say very much resilience, in my opinion, is one of the most important. Because if you're not a resilient leader, if you haven't got personal resilience, to tackle all those upcoming changes is going to be a real challenge.
Thank you. Thank you so much for answering the question. So whoever it is asked, I think they really got the answer for this question. And thank you so much for joining this day 3 virtual summit 2026. And so please do join our next speaker sessions as well. And please engage with the speakers and audience. And please share your thoughts and your questions and if anything else. Thank you and have a great day.
Thank you so much, Melinda. Bye, everybody. Enjoy the rest of the day. Thanks. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Yeah, so everyone, please do join our next speaker who is already waiting in the lobby. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.